Serious. What's a scary science fact that the public knows nothing about? Story 1. Attention. Serious. Tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. In any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules, posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this. Subreddit, message compose, Doris Credit, if you have any questions or concerns. Story 2. A CME, coronal mass ejection, is the most likely civilization-ending disaster to come from space. The sun emits them regularly, and they hit the Earth every few hundred years. The last one occurred in the 1890s, but society at the time was less susceptible to the effects. Were one to hit the Earth today, it would basically destroy all the tech infrastructure on whichever side of the planet is facing the sun at the time. This would knock the affected hemisphere back into the stupid ages, and it would take decades to recover, altering the global balance of power forever. It's only a matter of time. We could mitigate the effects, but it would be expensive, so we haven't and likely never will. At least, not until the problem becomes real to people. By then, it will be too late. This is a much more likely scenario than an asteroid impact. Story 3. 50 of insects have disappeared since 1970. Insect population is down 27 in the last 30 years, declining between 1 and 4 each year, depending on the genus. Story 4. Researchers have found viruses in the Arctic permafrost that have been frozen for thousands of years. One of these viruses, Pithovirus, was dormant for 30,000 years until the researchers revived it, and it infected the amoebas that were placed in the tank with it, which of course presents a scary scenario. What happens when the ice melts away and viruses are released that haven't been in contact with humans for 10,000 years? Answer. Fun fact, a large chunk of human DNA is believed to be transposition from viruses. Think of the herpes simplex virus. The reason you get it for life is because it engineers its way into your DNA. It forever incorporates itself into your DNA. Long story short, what scientists used to call junk DNA is not only regulatory elements, but leftover artifacts from previous evolutionary battles with ancient viruses. Look up transposon experiments with maize for further in-depth explanations if you're interested. Edit. Herpes is a retrovirus, not a transposon. Mechanism and principle is the same. But I don't want to spread any misinformation. Story 5. Bananas could be gone within a year. We only grow one type of banana tree. If a specific infection occurs that eliminate that kind of tree, it would spread like wildfire and we have no alternative. Apparently this already happened now so long ago. Story 6. Airplanes are dynamically stable, but helicopters are dynamically unstable. That means if an airplane pilot lets go of the controls of a small plane with no autopilot, if it's correctly trimmed and balanced, it will keep flying level until it runs out of fuel. If a helicopter pilot lets go of the controls, in about 2.4 seconds, it will tip over to such a degree that it is unrecoverable. We can let go of one control, the collective, for a little while by frictioning it in place to change the radio, adjust something, scratch our nose or whatever, but it's friction on. Do the thing with the left hand, friction off, and hand back on the collective. We fly 3 seconds away from falling out of the sky all the time. But then, that's also kind of the same for bicycles. Although they can only tip left and right, not every direction, subconsciously, you are always adjusting your weight and controlling the steering to stay upright. Same thing in a heli. You balance on a column of air, and you keep balancing the whole time. Just like on a bike. You don't even notice, you just do it. Story 7. The world is literally running out of sand that is usable to manufacture concrete. Most of the world's sand is in its deserts, but usable sand only comes from riverbeds, shores, and lake beds. People are being taken down over sand right now. Story 8. All onions, all veggies in the allium family are toxic to dogs. Worst case scenario, then can develop AIHA, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, whereas the body destroys its own red blood cells. This disease is about 80 fatal. My dog caught it. We are not sure from where, but his was a primary disease, not a result of a cancer. We think he was eating leeks out of the garden. Took a week in the hospital, 2 blood transfusions, and about 6 months of meds to get him back. He started at 45 libs and was down to 19 libs at the worst part of it. Story 9. Late to the party, but here goes. There are weaponized strains of anthrax, which can remain viable and dangerous for 40 years after release. In 1942, the UK tested an anthrax bomb on Gruinard Island. Eliminate a flock of sheep in days. Some died in hours. Examination showed that the spores could remain active for decades, and decontamination proved impossible at the time. The project was scrapped. Fast forward to 1981, an eco-terrorist group smuggled a sample off of the island and threatened the UK government with releasing it if the island wasn't decontaminated. The spores were still active and deadly. It took 4 years to plan and execute the cleanup, using 280 tons of formaldehyde in a seawater solution and removing 7 hectares worth of soil to a depth of 3 feet, about 58,000 tons of topsoil. Where the concentration was too high for the juice to do the job, the island was confirmed clean in 1990, 4 years after cleanup began. Story 10. The Demon Core was a spherical 6.2 kilogram, 14 lb, subcritical mass of plutonium 89 millimeters, 3.5 in diameter, manufactured during World War II by the United States nuclear weapon development effort, the Manhattan Project, as a fissile core for an early atomic bomb. It was involved in 2 criticality accidents on August 21, 1945 and May 21, 1946, each of which eliminate a person. Story 11. Oleander is one of the most poisonous plants in the world, and it's a very popular garden feature. If a kid accidentally eats some, it would not end well. Story 12. Heart muscle cells don't reproduce much in adults, roughly 1 per year. If you have an infarction or other stressor that eliminate those cells, then your heart won't be able to grow new cells to replace the dead ones. This is why patients with diseases like heart failure end up needing a heart transplant. Trying to get this process to happen is a major goal for many cardiac researchers. Edit. Thank you all for making this such an engaging and interesting discussion. I've been studying heart cells for 10 years now, basic scientist, no clinical training, and it's so refreshing to read many diverse perspectives, and on-point questions. Answer: my aunt had a major heart attack when she was 58. Docs think it was due to uncontrolled T2 diabetes. She lived literally 5 minutes from one of the top cardiac hospitals in the area, and because she got help so quickly, she lived. But her heart suffered severe damage that was unfortunately never going to recover, and her heart was basically operating at 66 of capacity. Against all odds, she lived another 10 years after the incident. None of her docs could believe it. Finally, one morning, she was showering because she was going to the heart doctor. Later that afternoon, my uncle heard a thud in the bathroom and went running. My aunt was dead by the time he opened the door. We were shocked and saddened, but she had grown tired of living the way she needed to with just 2/3 of a heart. She had little stamina. She was constantly tired. She was at doctor's offices all the time. I hope she's at peace now. Story 13. When doing an autopsy, they don't put the organs back where they belong. They are all stored in the belly. Story 14. Approximately 60, in some reports, of the world's population have the parasite Toxoplasma gondii in their brain. For a long time, it's thought to have been a benign presence, but recent statistical research shows that it may have an impact on things like levels of anger and rates of accidents and tragic end. When gondii is on rats, it changes their behavior so that they find the smell of cat urine, intimacy, appealing. So they find cats and get eaten. In the gut of the cat, the parasite can reproduce. Answer: its literal aim is to eliminate you so it can end up in a cat. It's known to affect your hormones, causing severe depression, increased anger, and far riskier and more damaging behavior, increased susceptibility to substance abuse, and seeing risky and dangerous behavior as less serious than it is, sometimes fun. If you have ever lived with cats or spent a long time with cats, you almost definitely carry it. Story 15. Anthrax spores can remain viable for decades in the soil or animal products, such as dried or processed hides and wool. Story 16. I only recently learned that when you get sunburned, the burn isn't because of skin cell damage. The UV radiation damages the DNA. Then the skin cells decide to commit tragic end and fall off so that the damaged DNA doesn't produce cancer. You'll never be mad at my skin peeling again. Answer: this is not to say that you won't get skin cancer from sunburn because your skin peels. You absolutely will get skin cancer if you burn over and over. Source: AM35 with a dozen basal cell carcinomas and one squamous cell carcinoma removed from my body by way of minor surgery. I've been sunburned more times than I can remember and peel like a leper after the bad ones. Story 17. Scientists don't know exactly how acetaminophen works to relieve pain and reduce fever. They have an idea, but nothing for sure. But yet, it's the most commonly used pain reliever in the world. Story 18. Activated charcoal in foods and drinks can decrease the effectiveness of any medications you take. Those Instagrammable black foods can end up eliminate you if you're not careful. Story 19. If your dog swims in a lake after receiving a spot-on flea treatment, it absolutely decimates the invertebrate population. A large dog swimming in 8 Olympic swimming pools worth of water soon after treatment will leach enough neurotoxin to eliminate 50 of the lake's invertebrate population within 48 hours. I say after, I mean relatively soon after, within, say, a day. To have an effect quite this devastating, the leaching does reduce over the month, but it's still there, and the effect of multiple dogs still allows for a terrible buildup of chemicals. Story 20. DuPont knowingly infected over 90 of the American population with PFOAs, a harmful plastic that has a half-life of 20 years. Lawsuit is still ongoing, but no one seems to be bothered. Edit. This link will talk about the different trials and settlements that DuPont and companies alike have faced. Also talks about what a PFOA and its dangerous effects. Story 21. Antimicrobial resistance. The bacteria are getting resistant to the substances much faster than the rate at which we are producing new substances. Soon, we will reach a scenario when antibiotics cannot treat simple yet lethal infections. Story 22. Brain aneurysms can be completely unpredictable and can happen at any time in your life, no matter how healthy you are. A kid who I went to high school with at the age of 16 just did not wake up one morning, and his cause of passing was a brain aneurysm. Answer: I know a couple. One left for work and forgot something, and came back in a few minutes later to find her husband on the floor after having an aneurysm, and lived because she happened to forget something. A few years later, the wife had an aneurysm, and he came home during his shift, copy, to grab son, and found her, and she survived. Wild shoot, moral of the story. You never know when it's your time. Story 23. The tipping point of most ecosystems won't be realized until it's far too late to help with human intervention. All organisms are so interconnected, but the general public thinks ecosystems are more robust than they are. Story 24. Inside the permafrost around the world, there is stored about twice the amount of CO2 we currently have in our atmosphere. That's why permafrost must stop melting. Edit. Thanks for all the nice, serious comments. Edit 2. Thanks for the awards. I appreciate it. Story 25. An asteroid passed the Earth in September that was about 90 meters in diameter, and we didn't see it until a day later because it traveled towards us from the direction of the sun. It passed us at half the distance from the Earth to the Moon. Story 26. So many people will struggle with infertility. It's not talked about or really discussed in middle school or high school in health class. When it happens, it's such a shock to the families, and they are completely unprepared. The numbers are going up as well. Statistical 14 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which is pretty high, but again, miscarriage isn't discussed. Story 27. Before the vaccine, the number of people who have had HPV infection and have had at least one intimacy partner was 85 in females and 91 of males. By far the most common STI. Answer: I went to get tested for it once, and before even giving me the requisition, the doc proceeded to say, just to let you know, you probably have it. I probably have it. It was to the point where he insinuated that it would be pointless to even take the test because most people have it, LOL. We didn't get vaxxed for it in school, but apparently kids do now. Story 28. Update. By popular demand, the WHO research paper on requirements for safe drinking water formaldehyde in drinking water. A lot of people in rural towns with an elevated cemetery around. This happens in Ireland a lot. There is formaldehyde leaking into the drinking water, but it won't eliminate you. But the thought of drinking dead people juice is probably equally bad. Sorry, not sorry. Update. I have a PDF link to the scientific research paper from WHO concerning the requirements for safe drinking water, and it covers the entire formaldehyde in drinking water issue. if anyone is interested. I read it, and I can confirm it's true, but not detrimental to your health, even long-term. Story 29. DARPA this week announced that it accidentally created a literal miniature warp bubble. Yes, like Star Trek, no, not like a warp bubble, a literal warp bubble. They have no intentions on pursuing the matter because it was an incidental observation from a different experiment. They're working on something cooler than a warp bubble. Story 30. Coal plants release 500 times more radiation directly into the atmosphere than any nuclear fission plant ever could. Story 31. The youngest persons who developed Alzheimer's were around 25 years old. One lady got diagnosed with it at 31 while pregnant. BT-dub, when you get the disease at like 65, it didn't suddenly begin. It has been creeping up and ravaging your brain for at least 20 years, if not more. You just didn't realize it, because our brain is very good at compensating damages until it cannot. Basically, the day you lose yourself in the supermarket, it's too late. Your brain is mostly mush, and there is so far nothing you can do. That means that if you are 40, 60 years old and reading this, chances are that some of you already started to experience the onset of Alzheimer's brain degeneration. It's just not advanced enough for you to realize it. Have a nice day. Story 32. The universe's Higgs field might be metastable, a false vacuum, and decay at any moment, destroying everything. Story 33. The human body temperature in developed countries is actually declining, and at the same time global warming is increasing the temperature thresholds for many fungus types. This is leading to a whole new medical issue of fungus infecting humans, and its main source of protection, body temperature, is no longer working. That body temperature is a large reason for the success of mammals all over the world. After the KT extinction, the sun was blocked and cold-blooded species couldn't raise their body temperature to eliminate off infections in their bodies. There is ample evidence that AFKT, that fungus, spread all over the world in massive quantities, which leads many to believe this lead to the ascendancy of mammals on Earth. Radiolab story about this for those of you interested in learning more and sources. Story 34. Nutrition deficiencies such as iron, vitamin C, have many symptoms that were uncovered in an experiment in residential school. They would have a class of indigenous children that would never get iron from foods or any intake. Another class would get the iron supplements, then compare for results. Story 35. There is a naturally occurring thought in many humans named the call of the void, where, without reason, humans see a way they could die, and they wonder whether they should eliminate themselves, even if they have no real intention of doing so. Edit. Yes, the true term is l'appel du vide, the French term for call of the void. Also, thanks for the awards. I believe this is my first gold. Answer. I've never had issues with heights before, but on a hike in Utah with one of my best friends, he had me lay on my stomach and look over the edge of a cliff. It wasn't even a particularly tall cliff, but I freaked the hell out, because all I could do was imagine throwing myself over. I scurried backwards on my stomach as fast as I could, and 2 years later, I still get super uncomfortable thinking about it. Story 36. Grapefruits completely fudge with a shitload of prescription medications. Edit. Grapefruits, not grapefruits. Answer. Probably the most common one that will affect the general healthy individual is that it can fudge with some contraceptive pills. Ain't got no time for no grapefruit, baby. Edit. there seems to be a few worried people. So, just for clarification, it's probably not going to actually get you pregnant. It may really ramp up those pesky side effects due to its interacts with estrogen production, though, so still worth considering. Story 37. There are alternative ways some proteins can form tertiary structures. These different structures make the protein unable to function. These alternate protein structures are infectious and incurable, as they are so stable. If you get some in your blood, they will slowly convert your own proteins when making contact. They're called prions. Answer. Some fun examples include 1. The spongiform encephalopathies. Your brain tissue rapidly loses its structure and becomes sponge-like. Mad cow for cattle and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in humans. 70 fatality rate within a year. 100 fatality rate in 10. Technically, all of the prion diseases cause spongiform changes in the brain, but others are more well known for their other features. 2. Fatal familial insomnia. Symptoms include paranoia, hallucinations, panic attacks, new onset phobias, and the titular progressive and untreatable insomnia. Eventually progresses to a dementia that lasts until you're dead. 50 fatality in 18 months. 100 fatality within 6 years. 3. Kuru, a disease that is transmitted primarily through cannibalism in New Guinea. 4 tribes members would eat their deceased, with women and children eating the brain, the area where the misfolded prions concentrate the most. Hence, the disease was strongly focused on them. However, even after cannibalism was stopped in the 1960s, the disease's 10 to 50-year incubation period mean the last known victim died in the early 2000s. Symptoms include a progressive tremor, severe lack of muscle control and coordination, and bursts of uncontrollable laughter, eventual vegetative state, and of course, a 100 fatality rate within 2 or so years of the start of the symptoms. Story 38. Confined spaces. Be very careful of confined spaces. It's not just the tightness of the space, but also the type of space, especially on old ships with a lot of rust. Opening up closed hatches and going into confined spaces can get you eliminated due to the lack of oxygen in those confined spaces. Others can also die from trying to rescue. Take things slow, evaluate your surroundings, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you are unsure. Answer. I work on ships and we're taught that confined spaces don't even have to be a closed space. Something like an open-topped cargo space can be considered an enclosed space due to gases that are heavier than air and have to be force ventilated before entry. If anyone wants some further reading, there's a chapter on enclosed spaces in the Code of Safe Working Practices. Story 39. Your microwave has several components that can eliminate you by touch. Never open the insides of a microwave. Story 40. I learned about TON 618 the other day. My facts here may be mildly incorrect. Feel free to Google. It's a black hole about 10.3 billion light years away, but we can still detect the massive amount of light bending around it. It's so large, they had to make a new category of black hole for it called ultramassive black holes. It's believed to be the largest thing in the universe. Its diameter is 14 times the diameter of Neptune's orbit, so it could fit our entire solar system in it, 14 times across, side to side. If the black hole replaced our sun, we would be deleted. If it replaced the black hole that is currently at the center of the Milky Way, within 120 years, the Milky Way would be deleted. This black hole doesn't swallow planets, it swallows entire galaxies. The idea of this thing freaks me the fudge out. Edit. Whoa. I went for a nap and this blew TF up. Most upvoted comment of all time. Less goo. So, yeah, I was mistaken a few times here. Like if the black hole replaced ours, it would take 120 years to destroy us, not the entire galaxy. The black hole is larger than I originally said, and true black holes don't technically give off light, but they are pretty much surrounded by light. Typed this out from memory, and sadly, my memory is pure garbage. But still, I'm glad this encouraged you folks to look more into it and stuff. Space is cool and terrifying, huh? Story 41. How easy it is to inadvertently seriously damage yourself with an unfortunate combination of ordinary supermarket products. Also, prions. Fudge prions. Story 42. If you're exposed to rabies and start to show symptoms, your chance of survival is virtually 0%. Story 43. If my college biology professor wasn't completely misinformed, most humans have some form of parasite living inside them, some variety of worm, etc. There are just creepy crawlies in our insides, and we might never notice them. The one that came closest to giving me nightmares was hookworms, although the thought that you could have heartworms kinda messed with me too. Evidently, they're not just for dogs. Answer. Hookworms are one that most people in developed areas don't have, and there's evidence that's why autoimmune disease and allergies are so common in those areas. Like the hookworms produce a mild immune suppressant, and the immune system attacks them. Without those interactions, the body attacks harmless environmental contaminants, allergies, or itself, autoimmune, e.g. Crohn's disease. Story 44. Limnic eruptions. There are pockets of CO2 trapped under lakes all around the world that can be released at any time, creating an invisible tidal wave that eliminate everything in its path. Since it's heavier than air, you will just suddenly start choking and die. Answer. It's only been recorded twice in two lakes very close to each other. It's exceptionally rare or requires incredibly specific circumstances, such as proximity to volcanic activity, and a lake where the deeper waters and shallow waters never mix. 99.9% of lakes mix at least once a year. It also must have a cool lake bed despite being in an area with high volcanic activity. Story 45. Another Carrington event. The original Carrington event was in 1859, which was basically an intense geomagnetic storm that disrupted knocked out telegrams, because that's all the technology there was to disrupt back then. Nowadays we use electricity for virtually everything. If it hit now, the effect would be like an EMP, but globally, there'd be no functional technology that involved electrics. In essence, losing all electrics would in turn stop communications, then logistics, and then fundamental infrastructure like food distribution, healthcare, and utilities other than electricity. Story 46. There's many unknown and forgotten diseases trapped in the permafrost, and it's slowly but surely melting.